Welcome to the Positive Spiritual Living Podcast, brought to you by Unity on the Bay. This is your positive path for spiritual living.
It can be an easy thing to say, I choose love. But when you really get clear about what does love ask of us in specific situations and circumstances, right? Like that's where the rubber hits the road. And that can be a little bit more difficult. And it can really invite us into recognizing that there is something else going on. Right? And so we are experiencing a lot of different things in our communities, in our nation, within us as a result of that. And the question is, what is it raising for us? Now, one of the things that Dr. King said is, we merely bring to the surface the hidden tension that is already alive. He wrote that when a group of ministers were asking him to calm down. Don't make what would later be called good trouble, right? And so, but he brought up, we merely bring to the surface the hidden tension that is already alive. We bring it out in the open where it can be seen and dealt with. Like a boil that can never be cured so long as it is covered up, but must be opened with all of its ugliness to the natural medicines of air and light. Injustice must be exposed, with all the tension its exposure creates to the light of human conscience and the air of national opinion before it can be cured. Now that quote was written decades ago, but as I read that, it could be written for this moment in time, right? Because I don't believe that it has ever been as exposed the things that need to be healed as in this very present moment. And the question for me is, what's the answer, right? How is it that we can see what has been exposed and start to work on healing it? And a lot of what the headlines have been in the last couple of weeks has been about, the ones that I've seen, about the radicalization of certain segments of, I was going to say society, but of us, I would say also. And the question is, what's been expressed is that radicalization is really just a symptom of what needs to be healed, right? When I sit with that, I recognize then that the remedy can also be a radicalization. Because for me, the remedy to this that we are experiencing is a radical expression of love, a radical expression of peace, not just the peace that feels good or the love that feels good, radical. And to me, that radical part of it is that it goes beyond what we believe is needed, right? Like we answer in a radical way to the things that are showing up, radical in knowing and holding on to the truth that yes, peace is possible, as Reverend Chris shared with us last week so powerfully, right? That we can be the peace. That's radical. And we can own it in a very radical way, that is the way in which we go out into the world. That is the way that we express who we are moment by moment by moment. And I realize that all that's been exposed has really, as I shared with you, been an answer to my own prayer and meditation. How many of us have said, reveal what must be revealed, heal what must be healed. And so here it is. It's been revealed. What is it that we can do as a result of it? And it can feel so uncomfortable sometimes, right? I don't know about you, but I feel uncomfortable with some of the things that come up even within me as I watch something on the news or I'm reading or thinking about these things. And that uncomfortability to me is a tension, a good tension, because it's the tension between what is and what can be. It's who I am and who I'm asked to be in this moment. And that can be that is a very healthy tension. And I love just continuing to learn more about Dr. King. And he confessed once that he wasn't afraid of the word tension. He said that that's the way that we were able to grow up, by having this healthy tension that was as a result of nonviolent tension, the nonviolent acts that he was bringing up. And not only do I believe that this healthy tension can be what makes us grow up and grow into who we are here to be, but I think it's also the ways in which we are able to expand, to stretch ourselves, right? To hold more of this in. Reveal what must be revealed. Heal what must be healed. And I get that many people, I'll own it, myself included at specific times, can feel hurt, can feel sadness, can feel anger in the midst of hope, in the midst of love, in the midst of peace, right? But we can have all those other feelings. And, it's not necessarily a bad thing that we're feeling those feelings, because it really is raising up for us certain understandings and invitations to do something with that which we are feeling. And if we can hone in on those feelings, the hurt, the pain, the anger, and transform it into creative action, my gosh, how we could respond to the situations that we are living through in this moment. Rosemary Fillmore, who is the granddaughter of our the founders of the Unity Movement, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, she said this: "The world has been changed for the better by men and women who have been angry about life conditions, prejudices, bigotries, the seeming inequalities of life. They turned their anger into creative energy, and vaccines were discovered, laws were passed, philosophies were born, schools and charities were established, books were written, and symphonies composed." What's the symphony that is being birthed in this very moment, right? What is our role? What is the instrument of love that we can be here and now? This anger, this pain, this hurt that can be transformed into a transformative experience, not only for us individually, but collectively for all of humanity. How do we move into that space of possibility, right? The dream is possible. I don't know about you, but I've been able to live into quite a few of the dreams that I've had for my own life. So if those dreams were possible, if I believe that the very Spirit of God is alive in this very moment, then that Dr. King dream is just as possible. If we own it, if we allow ourselves to be the channels of making that dream come true. Now, Micah in the Bible, in the Hebrew scriptures, was asked, how is it that we can win favor with God? What is it that God wants of us? There was a whole list of things that people were asking him about, but he said this: "What does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God?" I think that that's what is being asked of at least me in this very moment, to really own that verse and to see the ways in which I can really step into a greater way of expressing justice. For me, it's about practicing justice, right? It's about looking at my everyday experiences and seeking to be justice in those moments. It's one of the things that I'm excited about the racial justice ministry, because it's not just about showing up or showing or expressing what is currently happening, but inviting us into practices, a practice of justice, a practice of anti-racism, a practice of love, to then be able to love kindness. And for me, that's really about just loving the space of peace, because it could be where we may disagree, there may be tension, right? There may be challenges and difficulties, and we can still connect love to love, Christ nature to Christ nature, peace to peace, the peace that is within. And those two things, I think, become possible when we do the third part, which is to walk humbly with God. And the way that I see it is to walk humbly with God is to recognize that God is in charge, is to recognize that God is the one that I seek for guidance and inspiration to be able to know what practicing justice actually looks like in my life, to be able to know how kindness is showing up. Because kindness doesn't necessarily mean that we're just trying to keep the peace, right? Kindness is about who we are, how we're showing up, and how we are evolving ourselves and humanity to a greater expression of the dream itself. Dr. King was asked how long before the dream becomes a reality. And his response was, not long, because no lie can live forever. The lie that we're not sacred, the lie that we're not interconnected, the lie that we aren't expressions of the divine. He said, not long, because you shall reap what you sow. And if you're in this room, if you're watching at home, I know that part of what you're reaping is the possibility of love and peace in greater and greater ways. We will reap what we sow. We are sowing, and we are consciously looking at what else we must sow in this very moment, so that not only can we reap what we sow, but all of the world can reap it also. All of the world can be transformed as a result. He was asked how long, and he said, not long, because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. As I sat with what I was going to share with you today, I realized that part of it was that, I don't know, I almost feel like I needed to speak these words so that I can hold myself accountable to them, so that I can seek to be in greater integrity with my own commitment for this dream to become a reality. And I invite you to consider how you can hold yourself accountable, how you can dedicate yourself to this which we are speaking about, to this which I believe is really alive within you, asking, pleading, pushing to be birthed in this moment through you. Now, a few years back, I actually learned that Dr. King, as part of the marches in Birmingham, made every single marcher sign a pledge card of the ways in which they were going to show up in that march. And he talked about it in a book, Why We Can't Wait, that was published the year after the Birmingham March. And he outlined what those 10 commandments are. Now, if you know about Dr. King, he was a deeply religious man, probably more so than we even think. I've realized a few years ago that my understanding of Dr. King and his vision and the ways that he showed up were like surface level. There was so much more. It was almost like it was, I don't know if the right word is whitewashed, but it was made comfortable for a lot of us. What he said was strong. The way that he showed up in the world caused issues, and he did it knowing that he was doing it from the essence of love, because that's what love was asking for him in that moment. And so those 10 commandments, we tell you here at Unity on the Bay that we each can create our own religion. And this deeply spiritual man recreated, redefined the 10 commandments for him. Now, the ones that I'm going to share with you, I'll also redefine or reword just a few of them, because I needed to know what was true for me in these. I invite you to look and connect with them and ask yourself how they can be true for you. How can you own your own 10 commandments on the ways in which you're going to live out your life, the ways in which you're going to respond to the world that is taking place and the things that are taking place outside of you. And so the first of those 10 commandments is to meditate daily on the teachings and the life of Jesus. To meditate daily, for me, that's meditating on the Christ essence that I am. And to meditate, for me, is to remind myself moment by moment, daily, that the power to be the change, the power to be the shift, the power, the love, the peace, all of it is within me. As I meditate and remember that more deeply, it's going to be a lot easier for me to actually live it out. The second commandment is to remember always that the nonviolent movement in Birmingham seeks justice and reconciliation, not victory. For me, that's remembering always justice and reconciliation. That's the goal, not victory. The goal is love. The goal is forgiveness, reconciliation, a coming together. I remember going to a talk by Reverend Monroe from Harvard, where she talked about it's not about going from being the oppressed to being the oppressor. It's about really undoing the systems and the structures of oppression. So how is that showing up for us? The third commandment of his, walk and talk in the manner of love, for God is love. I couldn't have said it better myself for that one. That's one that I will hold like that, and really try to live into these commandments. Fourth one, to pray daily to be used by God in order that all people might be free. To me, that says, thy will, not mine. To live daily, to be used, to be a channel of that which God is. Not just into my life, but to be a channel for the greater community, the beloved community, as he would call it. And the fifth one, same thing, thy will, not mine. Sacrifice personal wishes in order that all men might be free. I hear sacrifice the egocentric gain and be about the community. It's not about the way that I want to experience life. It's not the way I want to, or my own judgments of it. It's like really getting into that intuitive, wisdom-filled nature that we are and asking, how is it supposed to be? How is it supposed to show up? Who am I to be a channel for this? Then the sixth one, observe with both friend and foe the ordinary rules of courtesy. Be respectful, be kind. Live into that Micah verse, right? And again, it doesn't necessarily mean that we are complacent, just to not ruffle feathers. It means that we do whatever it is ours to do, knowing that it comes from a place of love, becoming centered before doing it, to make sure and connect and say, yes, this is how love is responding to what is happening. Seventh, seek to perform regular service for others and the world. I love that he asked people at this march to pledge this, because it wasn't about just the march. It was about being of service. And so how am I being of service to, for example, Unity on the Bay? How am I being of service to nonprofit organizations in the community? How am I being of service to a greater unfolding of peace and love in the world? The eighth one, refrain from the violence of fist, of tongue, and of heart. Gotta take a step back, right, for that one. Because it's not just the physical, it's also what am I holding in? What is the violence that I'm perpetrating on myself as I hold those things in? And what is the violence that I could be perpetrating on others as I hold those things in? Ninth, strive to be in good spiritual and bodily health. The marches were long. The movement towards equality is long. Dr. King said not long, but he said that a couple of decades ago, right? Almost 60 years ago. So maybe it's not long, but it's definitely not short. So how is it that we are making sure that we are spiritually nourished to endure that march towards a greater expression of love and equality? And then the 10th one, follow the directions of the movement and of the captain on a demonstration. Really important on a march, right? To know who you're following. Well, how important is it for us to know what it is that we're following, who it is that we're following? The path that I walk, I want to make sure that it is the Spirit, it is God, it is that divinity within me that guides my way. It is that which I follow as I march along to this world that works for all, into this reality that we are creating from the vision and the dream that was shared with us so many years ago. And to know that that possibility is a reality. Right? Like I said, I've had many of my dreams expressed in the world. So I know it's possible when I commit to it, when I trust, when I have faith in the God and God, how it's showing up in my life. Dr. King said this: our only hope today lies in our ability to recapture the revolutionary spirit and go out into a sometimes hostile world, declaring eternal hostility to poverty, racism, and militarism. With this powerful commitment, we shall boldly challenge the status quo and unjust mores, and thereby speed the day when every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill shall be made low, and the crooked shall be made straight, and the rough places plain. Now, let us begin. Now, let us eradicate or rededicate ourselves to the long and bitter but beautiful struggle for a new world. It is time for us to rededicate ourselves to that. Yes, it may seem long. Yes, it may feel bitter at times. But yes, it is so beautiful because it is the space in which we are able to shine our light and our love more fully. That is the possibility that Dr. King shared with us. And that is the possibility that not only are we being asked to live into, but that's the possibility that will bring heaven on earth. It is up to us in this very moment to rededicate ourselves to knowing fully who we are and sharing it with the world. We can do it. I trust we can. Namaste.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Positive Spiritual Living Podcast, brought to you by Unity on the Bay, a spiritual community located in Miami, Florida. Unity on the Bay is supported by the generosity of its community. If you'd like to make a donation or learn more about Unity on the Bay, please visit unityonthebay.org. You can also follow Unity on the Bay on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for even more positive spiritual inspiration. Until next time, thanks for listening and many blessings. Namaste.